call to discuss hosted voice service and the Baum Act's implications associated with it. Most of you know me by now or are familiar with me. I work here at AT&T, of course. I'm a product manager, and we're primarily responsible for the HVS product. Joining us today are our fellow partners from ClearSpan, who help us with the operations and implementation support of the service. Many of you have met their team along the way. David Chambers, one of my colleagues, will be joining us here from ClearSpan and driving most of the conversation. Again, this is a series of events and conversations that are occurring, meetings every Tuesday and Thursday to 1 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesdays and 2 o'clock Eastern time on Thursdays. And, you know, the schedule and the content has been building. I will just say that, right? A couple of weeks ago, we started with what I'll call the introduction in phase one. We've moved to a second series of slides that take a little bit of this a little further in understanding and depth and complexity. And we'll continue to evolve that throughout the rest of the year as we'll be holding these meetings through the end of the year. What I wanted to just remind everyone is that, you know, this is a result of a law that was passed by the federal government, known as the Baum Act. We'll get into more specifics if we need to, that fundamentally expands upon what the government is asking be provided to an emergency responder, i.e. at a PSAP, public safety access point, when a call comes in for emergency services, so that first responders can be more capable and more knowledgeable about where to arrive and go to. You know, historically, we've had E911 for decades in the telecommunications industry. It's nothing new to any of us. You know, that's where we give you the street address and street name and say, go show up at this building. You know, the essence of this new law is that it requires that we now provide additional, what they call dispatchable location information, right? A little more detail. Am I in room 201 or am I on the 62nd floor, whatever the case may be. And so what David's going to do today is talk about what we've done to help better prepare our systems to support you, our customers, in administering and managing your information and data. You know, as the service provider, interconnected non-fixed VoIP provider, technically per the FCC, AT&T HVS has to facilitate and provide tools to our customers to enable them to manage and maintain this information on an ongoing basis. So we have integrated that capability recently in the new release of OpEasy that was installed by November 1st. It went into several of our servers. We've got different maintenances that were done to upgrade them, but they're all in place today. And what David will be taking you through is a little more background, splitting up your sort of user population into different categories. And then ultimately the blocking and tackling is how did you associate these new and additional response locations, that's a term we're going to talk about in a moment, with your users and phones and devices. So I'm glad you're here. I'll come back at the end to wrap up and maybe join in at the Q&A. Again, I apologize today. I'm not at my desk. I am mobile, but I'm standing by and I'll participate where appropriate. So thank you. David?
Thanks, Mike. I'm David Chambers. I'm a service architect for ClearSpan, and we work very closely with Mike and his team to support, operate, and design the services for AT&T's hosted voice service. For those of you that joined the presentation last Thursday, this is a repeat of that presentation. So if there's some feedback that you want to offer during the presentation, that's very much welcome. So first thing is trying to figure out how to get my new configuration to work. And today I do not have the K9. I'm actually in the corporate office. So what we want to cover today is an overview of Baum and Carey's Law, our recommendations of how to be compliant, what a dispatchable location is, the emergency routing service and what an emergency routing location is, the OpEasy integration with the Intrado ERS, creating dispatchable locations, assigning URLs to devices, migrating subscribers from existing Intrado ERS accounts, and communicator on PCs and mobile devices the LISC location information service and held HTTP enabled location delivery for Microsoft Teams and held capable phones, next steps, and then questions. Bear with me just for a moment, trying to get something out of my way. All right, the overview of Ray Baum and Carey's Law. This is going to be a problem. So I have all the attendance that is sitting in front of my slides, and every time I go to change something, it pops back up. So in August of 2019 is when the FCC adopted the rules and put those out for feedback. There's two parts of that. One is called Carey's Law, and the other one is Section 506 of Ray Baum's Act. Of the two, the Ray Baum Act, as Mike explained, is really about providing additional information about the dispatchable location for first responders. It's all about trying to get the first responders to identify and locate the 911 caller as quickly as possible. Carey's Law is the ability to make 911 calls without having to dial a prefix digit, and also to have a notification provided when a 911 call is made. The activation dates are for what's referred to as fixed devices. Think of it as an analog phone that you cannot move it from one point to one jack to another jack and retain the same number. That became in effect January 6th of this year. Starting January 6th of next year, it's for non-fixed devices. That could be a VoIP/SIP phone that you could unplug from one RJ45 and plug into another, still retaining the same telephone number, but be in a different dispatchable location. Things like shared call appearance and mobile devices and nomadic devices, but effectively a soft client on PCs. And that's going to be the focus of this presentation. As a reminder, there's several states that have additional rules and regulations that apply to 911 calls. You'll have to consult your individual state government to identify if that includes your state or not. Lastly, relative to this section, we're not lawyers. We recommend that you work with your public safety groups or your regulatory advisors or your counsel to understand how these laws and regulations affect your operations. So ultimately, this is about managing your exposure to liability of getting a 911 call to the correct 911 call center, which also referred to as a PSAP, Public Safety Answering Point, and providing them with accurate location information for the 911 caller. You can just imagine sending the call to the wrong PSAP. It creates delays. Sending them to the wrong location could result in tragic outcomes. And so it's first step that we're going to cover is regarding dispatchable locations. So all calls that are SIP or VoIP for 911 come through the hosted voice service from AT&T, and we deliver those to the PSAP, the correct PSAP, with the correct dispatchable location information. In this case, it's 101 Legacy Drive, Plano, Texas. And then the remainder of that is in addition to your postal address to help the first responder go to the second floor, locate Suite 201, and be there and identify the 911 call. So now we're going to introduce you to the Intrado Emergency Routing Service, also known as ERS. So when HVS sends the 911 call out, it's actually being sent to a cloud service from Intrado, the ERS. And the ERS has the ability to know, based on the location information, which PSAP to send that call to, and also which dispatchable location to send to that PSAP. So an emergency response location, otherwise known as an URL, is basically an index into what Intrado has in the ERS as a dispatchable location database. So when that call is made, that station identifier is sent to Intrado's ERS. In their database, that station identifier is associated with an URL. Then Intrado takes that URL to dip into the dispatchable database to pull out the postal address and that additional information. That allows them to select the correct PSAP and to send the correct dispatchable location to that PSAP. So easy integration with Intrado's emergency response service. So depending on whether it's a hard phone, an analog phone, a VoIP phone, a client on a notebook, a client on a mobile device, whether you're on net, off net, there's a collection of rules on how to accurately provision that in the ERS so it can act accordingly. So we took the action to start removing that complexity from the OpEasy administrators by embedding them into the logic in OpEasy. So in addition to that, you can build URLs and subscriber provisioning on an individual basis with the GUI. You can do bulk URL and subscription provisioning through spreadsheets. Again, it provides an automation of those rules for the ERS accuracy, and it leverages the hierarchy of administrators, both enterprise administrators, group administrators, and department administrators. It should be noted that department administrators are limited to assigning URLs to users. They cannot create, modify, or delete an URL. That is limited to enterprise administrators and group administrators. So creating the dispatchable location and the corresponding URLs. You'll find in OpEasy a new section in the main menu called 911 services. Underneath that, you'll find the emergency gateway that's been there for some time that there's not a lot of AT&T customers with an EGW appliance, but ERS, the emergency routing service, and under that selection takes you to three things: accounts and assignments. The top two are really for the ClearSpan ops team to provision. So when a new account is created by Intrado, there's an account ID that's associated with that Intrado ERS account. That gets sent to the ClearSpan ops team via a ticket, and the ops team then provisions the account in OpEasy and then also assigns it to the appropriate enterprise. And there's two different accounts. There's one that handles everything but MS Teams, which is referred to as a sub account. And then for each enterprise, there's an individual MS Teams account. And OpEasy provisions both of those to make it transparent to the enterprise administrators, the enterprise group and department administrators. And so when the call is made through the mechanisms that we've put in place in HVS and OpEasy, the call is routed to the correct account in ERS for processing. It should be noted that the ERLs that I'm about to discuss, those need to be created first by the EAs and GAs before they can be assigned to the subscribers. Underneath ERL management, you'll find the ability to either search or add. In this example, it's an add. When you select add, it's going to present these fields. The top field is a URL name. This is just a string of characters and letters that name is meant to be unique for every URL, and it should be something that's intuitive to the administrators. Like it could be ClearSpan headquarters, second floor. Below that is the civic address, of course, everything all the way down to country. And in OpEasy, the only country supported at this time is the US, because Ray Baum in Kerry's Law is specific to the US. Location, that's that additional information, like second floor, suite 201. That will be delivered with the 911 call. The next field, description, is just a free form field to have something that describes that location information to something that's more relevant to the administrators. For example, it could be the ClearSpan engineering lab, where that wouldn't really mean anything sending that to the first responders, but it does mean something to the OpEasy administrators for an enterprise. The section below, routing options, I'll get to in the next slide, but it's basically giving you the ability to direct calls to the PSAP, direct calls to a NINA certified security team on campus, if you have one, and then an option to conference both the PSAP and the security team into a 911 call. The custom callback is if you have 911 calls that originate from phones or devices that only have extensions, if that call gets dropped, the PSAP wants to be able to call back. Since the originator does not have a DID, you can assign a DID that would go to an attendant, a security guard, something of that nature that would be present in the relevant area of the 911 caller. The notification email, that is a list of emails that consists of emails and email to text addresses that when a 911 call is made, they will be notified of who called and their location and other details. So going to the next slide, this is an example of filling it out. Again, in this case, it's 1234 ClearSpan headquarters engineering. There's a lot of customers that have many, many buildings, and they have adopted a method of numbering those buildings. And so if you have that methodology in place for your OpEasy provisioning, I would recommend sort of associating that into the URL naming convention. Again, the postal address, the location information, the description. And in the routing options, this is an example of I want my security team to be conferenced in to the call going to the PSAP. The notification goes to not only my email address, but it also goes to an email to text address that would be routed to me as a text message. So in the event that I'm not at my desk, I'm just walking around with my phone, I would still be alerted. You can also put just a distribution group in here and manage it from your own Outlook or Google distribution list. If you do have the security desk selected, either to go to the security desk or to be conferenced, you must provide the DID for that security desk. The next field of notification display is you have the option of allowing the original calling name display to be delivered to the security desk, or you can change it and say, instead of, let's say it said ClearSpan headquarters, you could modify the name in this one URL that says engineering lab, as an example. And then the last field is security desk mute, on whether the call is going to be muted for the security team so they can listen, or unmuted so they can participate in the conversation. Again, I mentioned that you can create URLs in bulk. And so this is where you would export the spreadsheet to populate with the URLs. And again, once that spreadsheet is completed, here's where you would import it. So relative to the spreadsheet, this is not meant to be an eye chart. I just wanted to show you the complete tab, and I'm going to break it down into sections. So in the first section, column A through D, status is really just leave this blank when you're filling it out. It will be populated when you export an existing spreadsheet. The command in column B, you have three options. You can add, modify, or delete an ERL. Column C is the URL name. Again, should be intuitive to the admin. And URL ID. The URL ID in the ERS must be system-wide unique. So we take advantage of the ERS having the ability to create a system-wide unique string for the URL ID. It is highly recommended to leave that field blank at all times. If you export it and there's an URL there or a set of URLs, it will display the URL IDs, but it's not necessary to populate those when you're creating URLs for the first time. So the second section is really the postal address combined with location and description. So postal address, hopefully that's intuitive. The location, again, this is sent with the 911 call to get them to the right floor or to the right suite or whatever. And then the description, as I mentioned before, is just something intuitive that the administrators would recognize. And then the last part where we could choose to send the call to the PSAP or to the NENA qualified security team or conference both of them in. And in this case, the example shows it's just going to the PSAP. As I said, the next column for custom callback is if it's a extension only user. We highly recommend that you provide a custom callback number so that the PSAP can at least call someone back regarding the 911 call. The notification field, again, this is a group of email addresses and email to text messages. As an alternative, as I mentioned, you can also put a distribution list in there that you control within your own email environment. The security desk DID is only required when the security team is going to be the destination of the call or is going to be conferenced into the call. Notification display, again, is what you want that security desk team to see as calling party name.
David, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
In the notification email area, is there a
Right.
limit of how many you can put in there?
I've been told by engineering that it's at least 1,000 characters.
Okay, thank you.
Just depending on how long of an email address. For example, mine is david.chambers@clearspancloud.com. It's like I'm wearing my fingers out by the time I type in my email address.
So as long as they keep it under 1,000. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, David, hey guys, it's Mike James again. I think I'll just chime in there. I mean, I think for many organizations, you know, the preference or even the suggested path would be just to build a distribution list, put a common email address inside of OpEasy for that notification, and then maintain your distribution list on your email server. You can add and delete, you know, hundreds and hundreds of names if you wanted. That way you only have a single place to go maintain that distribution list. It's just a thought, right? Rather than having to go back into OpEasy and change that. That seems to make good sense to me, at least.
And the other thing is you may want different distribution lists or different emails in the notification field, depending on the emergency response location. You could have, you know, multiple buildings, and you probably wouldn't want the same people to be notified if there was a 911 call on the West Coast versus your building that's on the East Coast. You may have a centralized that gets both, but you certainly would want local resources to be notified for each location. The security desk mute, I discussed on when the call is delivered to the security desk, and error response is really if there's any errors when you try to import the file. So OpEasy, once you've created those URLs, now you can assign them to devices. And it's important to note you don't assign an URL to a user, because a user could have several devices. You could have, my example is I have a desk phone in my corporate office where I'm at today. I have a desk phone in my home office. I also have a soft client running on my notebook. I also have a soft client running on my mobile device. So all four of those examples have the same 10-digit DID. So I cannot assign an URL to a user. It must be assigned to a device. Again, we've enhanced OpEasy under the Phones tab for a user. So in this case, this user has multiple devices. You can go and select the device, and down toward the bottom, there's a URL selection, URL record name, and it will display all the URLs that have been created for that enterprise. In this case, I had just created a single URL. When I say all the URLs for an enterprise in the Intrado ERS account architecture, they stop at an account relative or associated with an HVS enterprise. So there's no grouping of those URLs. And what we've done with OpEasy, the ERS is the master reference for emergency response location information. Implementing this in OpEasy, OpEasy becomes the master reference for subscribers being device oriented. And I'll cover that but the point is, if you have 100, potentially even more than 100 URLs, that drop-down box will contain all of them. When you have that, if you start typing the first few characters of that URL, it will automatically navigate to that specific URL versus you having to scroll through it. So migrating subscribers from existing Intrado ERS accounts. So does anyone on this call have an existing ERS account?
No.
Okay, so since no one does.
Yes.
Oh,
It's your problem, child, Delane. Yes.
I knew Delane was there.
Yeah, Delane, we're actually, since you've seen this before, if you don't mind, I'm just going to skip over this rather briefly.
Perfect.
But we also have another project that is going to provide additional assistance to administrators to sort of normalize those accounts, whether it's moving legacy accounts that are DID based into what's called the dynamic sub accounts, or it's normalizing those dynamic sub accounts with OpEasy. But we'll keep the HVS population informed on our progress. So again, not a very fast way to go through these slides. Communicator on PCs and mobile devices. So communicator, or it could be other clients, but what I'm referencing here is not Microsoft Teams. That is a separate animal by itself. So communicator on PCs are known as nomadic devices because I can go from one location to the other. So my dispatchable location changes. My mobile devices, we have a different technique for those. and I'll cover both in this set of slides. So again, there are three families of 911 originators. There's the wired endpoints that can go from one location to the other, retaining their 10-digit telephone number. There's nomadic, where I have a soft client on my PC and I can move from access point to access point. There's mobile devices where I don't even need access point. I have cellular connectivity, and in the event that I don't have cellular connectivity, AT&T HVS still wants to try to complete that 911 call. So I'm going to cover what we do for each one, starting with nomadic. And this, again, I have communicator on my notebook, and I have the ability to, on net, go from one Wi-Fi access point to another, to plug into an RJ45 at one location, plug into another one. I have the ability to go to a Starbucks or take my laptop home. So in all those cases, my dispatchable location is changing. Intrado provides a plug-in which sits down into your tray on your computer, called Location Manager, and it interacts with the emergency routing service from Intrado. So it's not for MS Teams, and it is not for mobile devices with the soft client. It's a very lightweight client that basically, when it sees a change in either the IP address or the BSSID of a Wi-Fi access point, effectively the MAC address of a Wi-Fi access point, it will look to see if that is predefined. If it is not predefined, it's going to prompt the user for their location. Again, that location being in the equivalent of a dispatchable location will be postal address plus any additional location information. It automatically updates the ERS as either it detects a change in those predefined access points and IP addresses, or if it's not predefined, it automatically updates the ERS with what the user enters. Be aware that when you enter the postal address, the first thing that happens when the location manager sends it to the ERS is going to do a master street address guide verification to make sure that that is a valid address. If not, it will come back to the location manager, and the location manager will prompt the user again. Mobile devices. So working looking at how Apple and Google for iOS and Android devices have worked closely with a company called Rapid SOS that has the ability for 911 calls to send enhanced location information over the cellular network to the correct PSAP and provide that event's location information to that PSAP. However, in the use case that I mentioned just previously, I do not have cellular connectivity, but I do have Wi-Fi connectivity. We configure the communicator to prefer the cellular connection, but in the event the user calls 911 and I only have Wi-Fi, it will send the 911 call over Wi-Fi. We will see it at HVS. We will then take that call and forward to the Intrado ERS. The ERS will not know where that caller is calling from, and we have mechanisms in place between OpEasy and the ERS to send that call directly to what's called ECRC, Emergency Call Routing Center. It's a 911 call center that will talk to the caller to get the dispatchable location information if possible. I think that's it on that section. Now we're moving to a new technology that's coming out of our labs very quickly. It's known as Location Information Services, and it's supported by an HTTP-enabled location delivery protocol. So effectively what this is doing, it's allowing a SIP endpoint, either a Poly DVX phone or a Mitel 6800, 6900 type desk phone, that when it is either powered up or it's restarted, it will do a query to the equipment. It's called LLDP if anybody's interested. And from that, it will get subnet information, it will get Ethernet switch chassis information, and it will get Ethernet port information. So a IT administrator can configure the hardware to base the dispatchable location on a subnet level. So if you have a single subnet covering a dispatchable location, or you can take it down to a chassis, so that chassis serves a single dispatchable location. Or if you have a chassis that serves multiple dispatchable locations, you would take it down to the switch port level. Once the device has that, oh, sorry, got it ahead. So, that slide wasn't there. Sorry about that. So once the device has that information, it sends a held request to the location information service. The location information service indexes the dispatchable location database based on either subnet, chassis, or port, and then pulls the dispatchable location information either in a format called PIDA-flow, it's just the way it's laid out, which is postal address, and also callback number, or in the Intrado LIS, it will come back in a form of a custom URL, which is used as an index into the Intrado ERS dispatchable location database. And it will give that information to those endpoints. The endpoint will hold on to that information. When it's made, and when it makes a 911 call, it will include that in that SIP invite, which then is delivered to ERS. It takes that custom URL, indexes into the dispatchable location, identifies the correct PSAP, and sends the dispatchable location with the call to that PSAP. Next steps. So hopefully this is already in play to some degree for most of the AT&T customer base. But the first thing, and probably the hardest thing, or at least the most calories, is defining the dispatchable locations within your environment. For some, it may be as simple as a single URL for a single location, because the location is not is a single one-story environment, and the environment is so small that a first responder walking through the front door could effectively assess the entire facility. Think of it as a convenience store, or maybe a small library, something along that line. The bottom line is I would look at dispatchable locations being defined to make sure that when the first responder shows up, they can quickly find the 911 call. Once you have the dispatchable locations laid out, it's creating the URLs to assign to each one of those dispatchable locations. In the example that I have, the URL name is EHC-2345. So I may have an East Hall campus, room 2345, and that's just the method that I chose to use to label or to create the URL names. Again, it's an index into the dispatchable location database for the ERS. And it's highly recommended to have the naming convention intuitive and unique for every URL. In OpEasy's provisioning, it enforces the fact that the URL name must be unique. Unlike the Intrado ERS database, they basically enforce it by the account ID, which is 30 characters long. And we chose to use the URL name because it's much more friendly for the administrator. If there's extension-only devices, identify the answering points and the DIDs associated with those answering points. Again, it could be an attendant, it could be a security desk, but this is again for extension-only devices to facilitate callbacks from the PSAP. And who will receive notifications when a 911 call is made? Again, you may have a centralized security team, but you may also, that security team may serve multiple buildings. So you may want to notify the security team and a resource in each one of those buildings because of multiple URLs. And at that point, I want to take whatever questions and comments. As Mike said, we are evolving this presentation. I'm working with our CMO to create a series of recordings to cover these topics individually. We're hoping to have that available sometime, what is today? At least by sometime next week, at least the first set of them. And so any comments or any questions sort of helps guide us into improving these snippets of information to help the OPEZ administrators get their enterprise ready for Baum and Carey's Law. Questions or comments? Take the silence as no. So all the videos are going to be posted at this URL, clearspncloud.com/AT&T-admin-training. We'll also have additional documentation available at the admin_OPEZ_training. This will be posted as a slide within that URL that's at the top. And with that, unless someone has comments or questions, I thank you for your time and hopefully this was helpful. Mike?
Yeah, hello, David, and everyone. Thank you very much. David, you do a very thorough job. We appreciate that. Again, I apologize for being on the road at this time, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to add my comments. So we covered a lot of information and a lot of acronyms here, and if it's your first time through it, you're like me, your head's probably spinning a little bit. But I think the simple point is this, right? AT&T's HVS through the graphical interface known as OPEZ is well positioned to support these new laws and just help you support those new laws. And it will be evolving, right? I think David introduced some other concepts and protocols that have been on the market in some cases for a while, but not readily and largely deployed. So that's the good news. But more importantly, the tactic, right? Where are you today? And what we want you to walk away from here is thinking about your locations and your buildings and just how granular you want to create these, what we call emergency response locations. That's the key first, right? Build out these locations, understand if the second floor is good enough, or does it need to be the east wing of the second floor, or does it have to be a room number, right? Or does it, those are the kind of thoughts you need to apply for your locations, and then be ready to build and start that process. And David then took you through the template, right? There's an ability to create multiple URLs if your enterprise has multiple locations and groups and URLs and need them, and how to bulk upload them and get them populated. Once they're there, the next tactical step, kind of repeating what we heard, right, was then go into the devices and associated URL. So without making this any more complicated than we need at maybe this moment in time, there are a lot of different permutations, right? But the starting point is, as I've indicated, build a response location that's meaningful to your team and your organization, and let's get those into OPEZ. Along the way, as David indicated, not only have we posted historically the old or the recordings, I haven't checked today, but also the PowerPoint should be up there. And then we're reducing this content down into what I'll call remedial and training material into hopefully less than 3-minute videos, right? What is an URL? How do I build an URL? So that you can go back and just watch that component, play it, and understand it, and then execute on it. Always our help desk is available. You can call the 1-800 number or go to the Remedy interface and open a MACD ticket and ask for help, and we'll certainly get a resource to join you and have a discussion along the lines. Then lastly, the comment I wanted, there are some pre-existing conditions, as we heard, right? These new laws, Kerry's Law, which really was the advent of a tragic event that happened in a Houston hotel involving a young little girl named Carrie, right, who was trying to dial 911 for her parents, but it had a prefix of 9 in front of the dial plan, and she never could get out. So that's what that law eliminated, but it also addressed the ability to notify the front desk, for instance, that a 911 call had been made. That was expanded upon with the Baum Act to include additional dispatchable information and to do the notification. But I guess the point I wanted to draw back is many of our customers, and some on this call, have already been engaged with Intrado and ERS, right, up until this new code drop of OpEasy that integrated this capability. We offered a separate portal, effectively, to log in and do some of this work. And this work has been evolving. So those who have already built out emergency response locations and information, as David indicated, we're working on another project to help use the dirty word in IT, and that is migrate you all over to what's effectively the new way of doing it that we've expanded upon. I think is the best word over the course of the year and built into this OpEasy tool. So I appreciate your time. Clearly, I'm going to pause now. If you want to ask us some questions and just get clarity, feel free to do it at this time. And just think about what I've asked today about you to begin to map out your buildings and locations. I appreciate your time very much. I'm going to pause a moment, see if we got any open dialogue. A lot of silence. Well, many of you have my email address. Don't hesitate to send me an email if you have an offline question you want to ask. I'll try to get you an answer and get a resource to work with you to help tackle your particular issue. And if there are no questions, I'm going to go ahead and conclude the call and give you guys back 10 minutes.
Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.